The soundtrack and score in the popular internet show RWBY by Roosterteeth play a role in the narrative that seems, from my perspective at least, fairly unique. There are, of course, more common elements in the soundtrack. The way the lyrical songs and individual score movements interact is fun, but far from unique. The score helps to reinforce the emotion of a scene. One moment in particular, in Volume 3, Chapter 12, when Ruby is racing to the CCT to save Pyrrha, and Weiss puts her glyphs up the side of the tower, and a simple string of piano keys runs as the glyphs appears like an echo of Weiss's leitmotif. This is a purely subjective opinion for me, but I can't help but feel very deeply in that moment. The piano is so peaceful in the midst of complete destruction and devastation, it really creates a meaningful contrast. So, we have the RWBY soundtrack and score, and we can divide it into three distinct categories: the score, the exposition, and the unique element, prophecy. We've already briefly discussed the score, and there's not too much to say about it. Jeff Williams pulls out the stops with RWBY, and the score is simply fantastic. Quietly running in the background, the score adds a great deal to the way a scene plays out. From gorgeous symphonic movements, such as the score to the first half of RWBY Volume 2, to mystical, mythological movements in the very first chapter, to bombastic rock orchestras in Volume 1, Chapter 8, or Volume 2, Chapter 12. These are necessary elements that make the scene feel full and remove distracting silence, but also make moments of silence that much more impactful. For instance, when RWBY finally did make it to the top of the CCT, the scene is shrouded in silence. When Cinder forms her bow and arrow, all the music cuts out, and all that's left is the clinking of glass on glass, RWBY reaching the top, and then the piercing of flesh and bone. Because we're used to these awesome songs playing during battles and even during emotional moments, the silence here stands out all the more. RWBY also makes heavy use of leitmotifs. It introduces the viewer to the leitmotifs of each of the main characters in a unique way, however. RWBY's advertising before launch composed of 4 trailers, now known as the color trailers: the red, white, black, and yellow trailers. One for each of the main characters: Ruby, Weiss, Blake, and Yang. On the face of it, they are to introduce you to a vague sense of what the world will be like, what the characters' fighting styles are, and what their personalities are like. These songs also play in variants whenever its corresponding character appears on screen. In Volume 2, Chapter 1 in particular, when RWBY uses her speed semblance to defeat Team Juniper, the Red Like Roses leitmotif can be heard clearly. The music had been a fantastic orchestral set for that scene. Then in the very last move, against the roar of wind and dust and soda cans smashing about, the Spanish-inspired guitar theme attached to RWBY is prominently heard over the cacophony of noise. Other characters' leitmotifs appear not first in the trailers, but in the show itself. Most notably are those of Glinda Goodwitch.
Children, please, do not play with your food.
And Roman Torchwick.
We're gonna need more men.
And it takes a couple of scenes to confirm that those particular musical themes are indeed their leitmotifs. What's interesting is I cannot for the life of me determine a leitmotif for Professor Ozpin. Anyway, getting back to the trailer music, we come to the second category of music, and that's exposition. Most prominently, within the soundtrack in the role of exposition are the color trailers. Red Like Roses only has one line that's related to its subject character, RWBY, and it goes as follows.
Red like roses fills my dreams and brings me to the place you rest.
The next 3 lines relate to her teammates, Weiss, Blake, and Yang, respectively, which makes sense as RWBY's identity will be tied up in that of her teammates when she becomes their leader. Once RWBY launches up against the moon and the music breaks out in full force, we're treated to exposition through music. With the lyrics, in conjunction with the visuals of RWBY at a cliffside grave, we can clearly see that RWBY is motivated by the loss of someone dear to her. And with those eagle eyes, we'll be able to determine that the name on the grave is Summer Rose, leading to the logical conclusion that the person in the grave is her mother. This is later confirmed in the show proper. And once the lyrics end, so too must conscious thought, and we let the music lead us wherever it so desires. And the words I have to describe Red Like Roses are romanticism, determination, and awesome. It's clearly stated later on in the first volume that RWBY has a very romanticized view of the world and wanted to become a huntress because...
But husband and huntresses are just so much more romantic and exciting and cool, you know?
And under it all is a serious determination. RWBY is focused and will not let anything stop her if the gold is worth it.
I don't care what you say. We will stop them, and I will stop you. Bet on that!
These elements are reflected in the music, and for all the future songs, it shows us that it's worth paying close attention to the songs and their style. The white trailer follows, and introduces us to a new character, Weiss Schnee. The music here is remarkably different. The song opens with a quiet, slow piano intro as Casey Williams, voicing in for Weiss, begins the song. Asking the mythological mirror on the wall, who is the loneliest of all? In the video, at this moment, the camera flops to show Weiss not singing in front of a large audience as she was just a moment ago, but rather in battle with a giant automated suit of armor. In this moment, the music picks up, led by rapid-fire strings, but Casey, and by extension Weiss, maintains a consistent rhythm and pace, indicating a deliberate, focused mindset in the face of a chaotic world. Weiss clearly has put on a brave face for her family and the world at large, but on the inside, is suffering from a profound sense of loneliness. Even the last line answers the question with a resolute Our third trailer is the black trailer, which, interestingly enough, also opens with a soft piano. But this is not slow, as it was in the white trailer. No, it's much faster. This presents an interesting contrast between Weiss and Blake, to whom this song, From Shadows, belongs. Weiss's turmoil is controlled. It hurts, to be sure. Weiss is in a great deal of emotional pain due to her position in her life, and it comes out as she lashes out against the other characters in the early chapters.
I'm a victim!
But at the heart of the matter, this is how she was taught to interact with others that she perceived as lesser than her. And when this facade is broken, a sense of inner peace shines through. Blake, on the other hand, has a much calmer facade, but when it is broken, she resorts to running from the source of the pain or to emotional outbursts.
Maybe we were just tired of being pushed around.
This is represented in the music as well. The non-lyrical elements are intense, but very controlled, and this is how we're introduced to Blake, as intense, but controlled. Then Casey starts singing. And boy does she start singing. In fact, she starts singing just as Blake makes her first slash. And as the lyrics build, and especially into the first verse, the singing could be described as unleashed or unhinged if one felt uncharitable. Of course, this is not to critique the singing, perish the thought. Rather, it reflects the state of pain in which Blake finds herself. The lyrics continue to describe Blake's life growing up. How she was
born with no life, into
Adam.
subjugation, treated like a weapon.
I could talk for hours on how RWBY handles the racial and economic parallels in this show expertly and with such tact, but that might have to make for another video. The point is that these lyrics don't require interpretation. Blake feels discriminated against, and was certainly treated as a lesser being for who she was, that is, a faunus. It describes how her fighting back against an oppressive system began as an honest fight for freedom, but descended into darkness and madness as they went from simply wanting to... And as the video ends, Blake severs the literal connection between herself and her partner in crime, Adam, and the soft, quick piano returns, ending solemnly as Blake begins her new life. And finally, the yellow trailer. This was my favorite for some time. I've got a thing for pure, unbridled power in its raw form, not filtered or transmuted from one source to another. And that's exactly what Yang is. Yang's song is titled I Burn, and the soundtrack actually has the song in 3 different forms. For the purposes of this video, I'll be focusing on the song as it appears in the trailer. In this version, we're treated not only to I Burn, but also brief remixes of the previous 3 songs, reinterpreted as club songs. There are a number of ways to consider this, but in my opinion, the best interpretation is that of it being a reflection of her motherly instincts. In other songs on the soundtrack, such as Gold, as well as moments in Volume 2, we see that Yang took on a very maternal role in RWBY's life after RWBY's mother died. This role would naturally be extended to the rest of Team RWBY when the time came. So, the reflection of Red Like Roses, Mirror Mirror, and From Shadows and I Burn shows how important her teammates are to Yang. But they're played against rough, heavy club beats. This naturally fits the video as it takes place in a club, but also matches Yang's personality as a party girl who wants to have crazy adventures and see the world.
I'm a thrill seeker. I want to travel around the world and get wrapped up in as many crazy adventures as I can. And if I help people along the way, then that's even better.
The contrast between the two philosophies should be carefully considered, especially in light of the end of Volume 3. And it isn't until Junior himself comes out with a rocket launcher that I Burn actually gets going. It's appropriately fiery, and makes frequent references to fire. It paints a picture of a person nearly out of control, overloaded with power and energy, culminating in one final explosion to end the song and the final trailer. But, as much as I love me a good score, and some awesome rock tracks to headbang to, I'm looking at you, Divide, and songs that contribute to the narrative through exposition, RWBY takes one final step to make its soundtrack something really unique. Now, there are plenty of other songs in the soundtracks that talk more about the characters, their backgrounds, and their personalities, but they don't have visuals to accompany them, so I stuck to the trailer songs. But there's one song in particular that I think is extremely prophetic. Let me explain what I mean by this. The expositional songs refer to something that happened to the characters in the past. The score refers to something that's happening in the present. The prophetic songs cryptically tell of what will happen in the future. The most blatant example of this is I May Fall from the first soundtrack. Now, I May Fall was sort of a throwaway song in the first volume. It played for about 15 seconds at the end of Volume 1, Chapter 2, for the credits song. Its placement, so far as I could tell at the time, was purely arbitrary. I mean, at this point, we've barely been introduced to the 4 main characters, and we haven't even met Pyrrha yet. Actually, I take that back. It's very carefully placed. We're at a point in the story where everything is bright and easy. The villains are ineffectual and charming, but have enough mystery to them that you couldn't hate them even if you wanted to. The world is full of opportunity and excitement, and as the screen fades with a charming joke, we're met with a strong, defiant... It's defiant, but not in a silly or pretty, I'll do my homework when I'm good and ready defiance. It's a person facing near certain doom and summoning the pure will to deny their attacker their victory. That they may fall, but they will make it one more day. And it comes right after a silly introductory chapter. I mean, we haven't even met Pyrrha yet! I could go into elaborate detail about how each line corresponds to an event in the latter half of Volume 3, but that's not the important part, and frankly, the correlations are obvious enough that you should be able to figure them out yourself with hindsight. What really matters is the overall tone. The defiance in the face of strongly implied death, the very grim nature of the song, even the fact that something is happening that requires this type of bravery is significant. What the song is telling us, that early on in Volume 1, is that things will get worse. A lot worse. Now, on the face of it, who cares if we know in advance if things will get worse or not? If it's planned out in advance, then it'll flow naturally and it'll make sense. It doesn't really matter if we know it, right? Well, here's the deal. While you're watching the show, your brain is building a sense of what the show is like. And every time there's a corny joke or a lighthearted scene, your brain adds another brick to the lighthearted comedy side of the scale. Every time a 17-year-old girl beats back Roman Torchwick, your brain adds another brick to the ineffectual villains side of the scale. And every time Cinder makes an arrogant comment, after seemingly watching her plans fall apart, your brain creates the delusional villain scale and throws a sack of bricks on it. The point is that by the end of the second volume, your brain has safely established the sense that RWBY is a lighthearted action comedy with no real stakes. But there are a few shades to that certainty. The first is Summer Rose's death, and the fact that her gravestone is the first thing we see. And the second is the music. From the second episode, the music is telling you it's going to get worse. And while that doesn't place any bricks on the scale, it puts them in your hands, and makes you ready to drop them when the time comes. All that is to say that when things do get intense and people do start to fall, your brain is ready to accept it. It's jarring, it's surprising, it's shocking even, but you're ready for it in a sense. Some of us were even looking forward to watching it happen. A great fight is, in a lot of ways, an expression of values and opinions and how they translate into physical, interpersonal interaction. So when Blake and Adam fight, the way they fight is important. It's starkly different from the way Jean and Pyrrha spar. The way RWBY fights Torchwick in Volume 1 is starkly different from the way they fight in Volume 3. RWBY's fiercer, more determined, but not desperate. In fact, I see desperation in Torchwick's fighting style, expressed in his anger when he beats her with his cane. Because he's a grown man beating a 15-year-old girl with a cane, there's something carnal and violent about that which explosions and snipers just don't capture. I've gotten off track. The point is that music is designed to tell you something, and in a lot of ways, what it's saying isn't explicitly stated. It's a lot more subtle. Some things, probably most of what music has to say, you'll notice if you listen with any degree of care. But a fair amount of it you won't notice. But your brain will. And your brain will be making itself ready for the inevitable change. Those are the three elements that I think make the RWBY soundtrack really something special. So I hope when you rewatch the shows and listen to the soundtracks, you listen with a greater degree of care and may find something a little special about the show. Thank you for listening.